CSR blog. I started my own blog last year because I felt I wasn't writing enough. Who knew? This was also the time when I left Vault and was independent and knew that I needed to keep pushing myself to keep writing, to stay visible and continue to talk about the issues, because I felt in the past 5 years not enough reporting was going on these issues. Journalists were not making a connection. New York Times got rid of their philanthropy beat reporter, and I felt there were tons of gaps to be filled. So this was my way of motivation. That was my 6-month stint last year to be independent. Hated working for myself. Had to form a name, so came up with that name, Sing Solutions. Did some work on strategy and CSR communications with a bunch of clients. And finally started at CSR Wire in December. CSR Wire, for those of you who are not familiar, is a CSR sustainability and business ethics news distribution website. We do news distribution for our clients that go all the way from for-profit and non-profit to academics and entrepreneurs. We help them distribute their news in over 25 categories, all the way from academics, business ethics, to volunteerism, workplace issues, fair trade, supply chain. You name it, we got it covered. So besides news releases, we have a blog which is independently written by almost 200 contributors. They come all the way from authors to thought leaders. Some include John Elkington, Wayne Visser. Our CEO, Joe Sibilia, has been a very ambitious entrepreneur all his life. I have my colleague, Kristen Sibilia, here in the audience. For anyone who wants to learn more about CSR Wire. Tons of services up there. We have a very confusing website because we offer a lot of content, and we're happy to talk to anyone about that after. So today we're talking about engagement, so I figured I'll just lay out some of the rules out there just from a media perspective, from a journalism perspective, and really stakeholder engagement, and switch it over to employees, and then the two experts in the room who are going to talk about their company-specific information. So this is really what we were about a couple of years ago, right? Everyone sends out press releases, you wait for people to pick it up, you count them as impressions, you put it in your report, it goes towards your reputation and your marketing dollars. Well, that's kind of changed now. Because Wall Street Journal and New York Times are really only going to cover so much, right? If I heard this last week, and it's going to stay with me for a while, and I think Peter might have too at the Boston College Conference. If New York Times puts you on the top half of their page, it's probably because you're doing something wrong. And it's probably because they're going to put you there a couple more times. That's great to know. Now you've already learned something. You know, today with social media, these press releases are reaching millions more than you intended them to. Press releases were meant for specifically reporters and bloggers. Today they're reaching consumers. Our website is used as a research tool, not only for students. Some universities have our website as a mandatory tool to be used for their thesis and research. And these are being looked at not only by potential candidates, but current employees, researchers, investors. And so whether it's picked up by mainstream media or not, you're reaching many more eyes than ever before. And that's something that we all, you know, I always start by saying social media is not for everyone, but we have to understand that it's out there and it's doing a lot for our brand if we do it the right way. Just some of the icons that most of you are familiar with. So what can CSR executives like you in the room do to maximize shareholder engagement or really employee engagement in today's context? Just understand that your employees are using these channels, you know, for 3 real ways. They're demanding change, right, by figuring out what employer they want to work for. They're figuring out reputation. They want to understand. You're giving out $30 million a year. Really, what does that mean? How is that going to help them not only go up the leadership chain, but also make an impact? Are you aligning with their values? They're making decisions on social media, and unfortunately or fortunately, the way you look at it, they're being very vocal about it, right? Depending on whether you have a social media policy or not, they're still talking about it. So how do you engage employees through social media and all the networks available? Set small goals. You know, if you have a Twitter account, if you have a Facebook page, you know your employees are looking at it. So set small goals. For example, if you have a Facebook page, talk to your employees and ask them what really matters to them about all the efforts you do in CSR, the initiatives, your internal champions, those 500 people who volunteer every year, those people who exceed 40 hours a year in volunteerism. Talk to them and help, you know, understand how they link up their personal activities and values with your brand image and how they can help you promote your brand on Facebook. But for that connection to be made, we have to be on the same page, right? We don't want our employees to be on Facebook saying, I really work for that insurance company, but I don't even buy their insurance. And focus on engagement, not information. I think Peter's going to talk about this a little bit more in terms of very specific data that Wells Fargo has collected, and reciprocate. I know it's hard. I know social media feels like so much in your face all the time. How am I going to manage? It's time intensive, but it's important, just like consumers, that we give feedback back to our employees and tell them that they're being heard and that their input is valuable. So, question for the audience. What scares you the most about social media before I get into a little bit more?
Upkeep.
Okay, yeah.
Content control.
Okay.
Volume.
Volume.
How to respond to something negative that's posted about your company.
Okay.
I would say employees putting themselves at risk by accident.
Good point. Yep. Facebook's all over the news right now about that, giving out passwords to our recruiters. How fun is that? So, doubt, right? That covers some of the things that came up. You're doubtful. Is it going to work or not? How many people are you reaching? Who are you reaching? Are you going to have the resources? The uncertainty? Fear of the known. We know the capability of social media now with the Arab Spring and so many of the other things that Mark Gunther talked about yesterday and some of the other panelists did. We know what can happen. We also don't know what can happen because social media is constantly moving. It's a moving target. It's evolving. There are no best practices out there. They're constantly changing. So how do we wrap our hands around that? This is one easy way of doing that. Gamification. Gamification is literally explain the use of games to engage employees, not only to increase productivity, but also to help them feel motivated and involved at work, as well as your CSR efforts. It involves social media. And I just want to throw out some, I'm not going to say what company that is, but this is one opinion, and I'm sure some of you share this. Yeah. Not everyone is looking to work for a fun and innovative company. Some people just want a 9-to-5 job with a trusted company and go home. Right? How many of you feel that way or have heard that from some of your employees? Right. And that's okay. But here's some data. 27% of surveyed respondents confessed to playing for at least 30 minutes at work, with an additional 8% admitting to playing between 1 and 2 hours every day. I mean, my husband works for a Fortune 500 food services company, and he spends at least 2 hours a day playing. Not at work. But he does. That energy could be used by his employer for him to start thinking of how to do his job better, of how he can, do different things, how he can. There's just so much innovation waiting to happen. We just need to figure out how to get to these employees. And a little bit about policies. Regardless of companies that are instituting social media or internet policies, I've heard this time and time again. This happened 2 weeks ago when I was at Boston College's conference. We did a social media boot camp for one day, where people started to click on their Blackberries and open Twitter accounts, and they couldn't. They were locked out. So, regardless of that, people are finding ways of filling their boring moments by playing on their iPhone, iPad, and other devices. I mean, how many of you here today have a smartphone? Right. How many have an iPad? Right. I mean, no one can control your access on that. So, this is, there's a lady, Michelle Bird. She runs an organization called Games for Change. She helps companies and nonprofits come together to create games for social impact. And then these games go internally at employers to be played by their employees as well as their nonprofit partners. And I spoke to her a few months ago about that. They did a full festival on some of the new games that are coming up specifically for workplace giving and involvement. And she told me a couple of the benefits which I felt would resonate with you guys. She said, they're more strategic and more scalable than discussion forums. How many of you have intranets where you have like a whiteboard or a bulletin board where employees can submit ideas and get to talk to their senior management? How effective have they been? Anyone?
Not very.
I don't want to say that's the answer I was looking for, but that's the truth, right? It takes a lot for us to go on a discussion forum or a whiteboard and really talk about our issues and ideas. We're happy just doing a 9-to-5 job, and now you're asking me to go on a whiteboard and do this. But if you talk about games and you call it fun responsibility, it suddenly starts to make sense for people because you're asking them to exercise brain cells that are not doing their 9-to-5 job. And so scalable, more strategic, and it offers companies a new interactive way. Just another code. So finally, in the end, I don't want to take up too much time because we have some great information waiting to be heard. Just wanted to introduce Yammer to you guys. How many of you use Yammer already? Do you like it? Is it useful?
It's useful for what it is.
Yeah. It's taken a while for it to catch on.
Yeah.
Employees.
How long have you been doing it?
We had it for 2 years and then we completely stopped using it, so we just started again.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was that based on feedback from employees?
No, I don't think
No.
I think it was just drop the ball kind of thing.
Okay. Any other?
We've had it for several years and it's suddenly taken off. People are engaged in it because it's an online discussion place.
Right, so Yammer is kind of like putting Twitter and Facebook internally on your company's server. So people can talk, they can tweet to each other, they can like stuff, but it's all internal, it's controlled, it's within the organization. So they don't have to worry about social media policy, and you can use the platform to really get engagement going, more involvement in your community affairs. And this was a survey from last year on Yammer use. Survey of 10,000 Yammer users. 78% said teams communicate more efficiently by using Yammer, and 69% said Yammer saves them time. So I know I heard that a couple of times, times and resources might be worth looking into.
Is it branded Yammer? Could we have Yammer and not know it's Yammer? Because we feel like we have something like that, but we're calling it something.
Yeah.
Could it be face?
Yeah, it could be. I mean, I know Capital One has a similar program, but it's not called Yammer, but it does exactly the same thing. So you could have it in-house, built in, if you have the resources. This just offers you something that's ready and customized, and it's, you can put it in.
Okay.
Is it similar to something off the SharePoint platform that would be like an intra-connect community, or is it like Facebook, but for internal use?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
it's similar, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and for the users of Yammer, perhaps you can elaborate a little bit on.
It reminds me more of Twitter than Facebook.
Yeah. Did you have
I
any?
agree.
Yeah, so everything we're saying, we don't want our employees to be on Twitter. They're representing us. We have especially industries who are regulated by a ton of laws and legalities. How do we energize them, and how do we use all their need to blast everything they want to talk about on social media? Well, we can use Yammer or several other tools that are available out there to help them talk about this stuff, but in a controlled fashion. They can still have some of the same conversations. They're just not public facing. So, wrapping up some of the quick points that I made, start small when it comes to social media, start small. It might even be as small as starting a LinkedIn group for your employees and posting discussions. It's very tepid. It doesn't require a lot of participation. It gives people a flavor of what social media means and requires. Measure, of course, I don't need to emphasize that enough. I think everyone in the room already understands that. Evolve. Social media is going to be a tool for a long time, not the goal. The goal is really engagement and as much as impact as you can create. It's always going to be a tool. Some companies have really thought of Twitter and Facebook as their goal, right? We're going to get 1 million likes. That cannot be the right goal, because in 6 months, Facebook is going to come up with something new and you're behind again. And so ask for feedback and allow ownership. Allow your internal champions to really own this after you've started it. And keep it real. I can't overemphasize this enough. As an employee who switched jobs several times, I guess I'm part of the millennial generation, even though I hesitate to say that. Keeping it real is important for us. Our companies, when they do community involvement affairs and initiatives, we want to not only feel we're contributing, we also want to understand we're on the same page. And know that you're driving impact and a long-term culture shift, not metrics. In fact, Peter articulated that very well in a recent blog for CSL Wire. Hint, hint, go read it. And finally, a plug for my employer. Let us help you become storytellers. This is what we do. We help you guys communicate with your consumers and employees in a more interactive way. And this is just some of the ways we can stay in touch. That's my email, our Twitter handle, and our website.
Thank you so much. And Peter,
Peter, you're up next, is that correct?
I guess so.
And thank God the machine is working and we have the right presentation. Is that the right start?
It is. It is. So I would really like everyone to feel free to just jump into the questions if you have them. My one caveat is it's really easy to get me off track. So I'm gonna try to go through the information I have. I'm gonna change tack a little bit here. I guess if you were to summarize what the approach I'm going to take, Aman mentioned measure. That's part of what you do. We obviously at Wells Fargo measure the number of impressions we make, and everything that I'm going to talk about is pretty much internal focused employees, and I'll give you a sense of what Wells Fargo's scale is going on. We measure the number of impressions, obviously. But what I want to focus on now is measuring the impression we make. Catchy, huh? So Wells Fargo, just to give you a sense of our scope and scale, we have 270,000-ish employees. We have people in all 50 states and some overseas, but we don't really involve them in our giving at this point, a little bit in volunteerism. We've heard people talk about staffing. I and my team of 5 manage the employee giving, matching gifts, volunteerism, and an employee hardship fund, and some other smaller programs. So we do that centrally. We rely on a network of thousands and thousands and thousands of employee volunteers to actually execute things. Like if we were going to have a game type thing, like we saw yesterday with the what was the cubicle thing? The cubicle makeover. It was kind of a game. And then the voting online. It's a great idea. If we were going to do that, it would be done by a local community affairs person or local volunteer. My team doesn't do that. We do all of this other stuff that we're going to talk about. And specifically what I'm going to talk about is an effort that we went through recently. We, like so many other companies, do an annual employee engagement survey. And engagement here is the Gallup helps us with that. And so engagement is fundamentally about how excited you are to be in the work environment, how tied into your job you are, how much you like working for the company, all those kinds of things, not how many hours you volunteer. So that when I say the word engagement, that's really what I'm talking about. We have 3 different sources of data that we have overlaid and looked at. One is that employee engagement survey, so we know how our employees are feeling about working for the company. And I was shocked to find out that we didn't know 100% 5-level engagement. I thought everybody was working. Another set of data is, of course, our program usage. So those people who volunteer, those people who donate, those people who sign into the tool and don't do either, but just sign in. And the third is a campaign survey we run every year during our annual giving campaign. We get about 170,000 of our 265,000 team members logging into the site, so 60 to 70%. Of those, we generally get about 20,000 responding to the survey. So we have a lot of data here that makes this pretty statistically significant. So,
I'm sorry.
yes, please.
What are you asking in that survey?
We ask, thank you. We ask a lot of different questions. Fundamentally, we focus on how satisfied are you with the campaign, and there are a lot of dimensions that go into that. The number of communications you get, do you get too many, too few? Do you feel pressured to give? Do you feel pressured to give? Because we have an open choice campaign, it's open designation, and giving is a choice. We have a 36% donor rate. We don't coerce anybody to give, or at least we tell everybody not to do that. All the things that you'd want to know about how people feel about the campaign you're running. We also ask about causes that they're interested in. Do they volunteer? We ask some demographic information, but we actually have their employee ID, so we know what their demographics are.
So you ask that survey, you do that survey within the campaign every year?
We have for the last 5 years. Started 5 years ago. And then we put a ton of effort into evaluating the information. We have, of course, an internal survey team that does this for all kinds of things, benefits, and the engagement team.
And I'm sorry, what was the percentage of folks that actually returned the survey, who complete the survey?
It's we had about 20,000 people return the 2010 survey. That dropped a little bit this past year because, and we looked pretty deeply at why that was. We accidentally had placed all of our survey links below the fold in the email that went out. So it dropped down to about 8,000 people responding to the survey. But really, when you look at numbers like that, you're getting good data. Even if we had half that, it still would be very good data. So speaking of the data, when you start to get, see, I told you it's easy to get me off track. These slides, this is the first time I presented this to anybody externally. My team has presented it internally to our HR group, and you'll see why in a little bit. So this is a very simple overlay of program usage with the engagement, team member engagement. So this represents all of those employees who check the top box on the engagement survey. These are the most engaged team members. And just make sure I have that right. Yes. What we can see is those who either donate nor volunteer, I'm sorry, the most engaged team members, I told you this is the first time I presented this. Those who participated either by volunteering or donating had a higher level of engagement in their jobs. Those who did both, highest level of engagement on average. This is not really a shock, I think, to those of us in the room, but I think, well,
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify. So when you say engagement, is that a roll-up of a number of questions to find engagement, or did they check I'm engaged?
No, thank you. So the engagement survey we have is something that's run by Gallup. It's pretty standard for their questions. I think it's tweaked a little bit. They have 12 basic questions. We add 4 that we call engagement and empowerment. And then Gallup determines a level of engagement from 1 to 5 based on how they answer those questions.
So that's what the top was?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's basically the most engaged people volunteer and donate. Okay, next. We also looked at some industry information, and this was a study done by a group called Towers Watson, and I'm just going to read a little bit about what they did here. Towers Watson, because we're taking their data, so I'm going to say who they are. Towers Watson, a leading global professional services company, helps organizations improve performance through effective people, risk, and financial management. They conducted extensive research in the area of team member engagement. They recently did this analysis, and one thing they found is that companies with highly engaged team members have actually operating margins that are more than double companies who don't have highly engaged team members. So they did a study that essentially linked employee engagement to company financial performance. So shareholder value, if you will. And now the title of this slide, Why You Should Care, the U is our HR people. I just stole these slides right out of the deck. We provide to HR. Because when we talk to, we rely on other people in the company to actually run events and actually go out and ask people to donate and get people to volunteer. One of the ways we do that is by showing them the reason they should. So why should our HR care? Why should our HR create an environment that's supportive to community involvement? Well, the 2 charts here, the top one is a link to engagement and turnover, and the bottom one is a link to engagement and performance. Not surprising, more highly engaged employees are less likely to turn over. And following here. Really not surprising, but this is all presenting the data to back it up. And the bottom chart, highly engaged team members are more likely to be performing at a high level. People who are disengaged in their work, not likely to be getting good performance reviews. This is not really a surprise, but when we go back and consider both this and this, we can see there's a strong correlation between volunteering and donating, and high engagement, and therefore performance retention. So this is all, by the way, I should be clear, correlation. We can't use any of this data to determine causality. We can't say, force people to volunteer and they will be more engaged in their job. We all know that doesn't work. By forcing people to volunteer is not volunteerism. So this, I'm going to switch gears a little bit now and get into the campaign survey. I'm happy to take questions along the way if anybody wants me
Peter,
to.
before you move on, what's the year-over-year for the team members? So how many years did you look at to come up with the turnover data? 1 year?
Yes, that was just a 1 year. And that was also something that our HR worked with Gallup to look at. It's not something my team has access to.
Do you feel like 1 year is good data? I mean, based on a life cycle of a team member's tenure?
For our size, yeah, we do have to look at the context of all this. When we go in and we deeply analyze the programs that we run and how we run them, we will look at all the context. And I'll talk about that in a moment. But I do think it's valid to look at that 1 year cycle because we are such a large and diverse employer. We have team members that are in-store tellers, and there are like 2 people that work in a supermarket as part of a brand, and we have people who work in corporate offices and everything in between. So I do think it's validated. Thank you for bringing that up. So I want to drill a little bit deeper down into now looking at our campaign survey and how we're really measuring what people feel about our campaign. One thing I probably should have said earlier is that not only are we a big company, but for the 3rd year in a row, United Way has ranked us the #1 employee giving campaign in the country. And this most recent campaign, we raised $44 million from our team members. And when you add in the gifts they told us they made outside the campaign, that jumps up to $63 million. So our team members give a lot of money. We raise a lot. We're processing more than $1 million out of each paycheck now for 2012, and we'll run about $30 million through our accounts to over 20,000 charities for this year. So how people feel about this campaign is really important to us. One of the questions we ask basically is overall, how satisfied are you with the campaign? And we're very happy to say that satisfaction, these are top box numbers, I believe. No, I'm sorry, they're not. These are the 4 and 5. So we asked them on a scale of 1 to 5. So as you can see, very few people are not at all satisfied. You're always going to have some people that are at that lower end. And then we have a very good, strong satisfaction rate. I'm very happy about that. Now what you're seeing here is 3 years of data. So this is 2009, 2010, 2011. Green is 2009, 10, 11. And we were really, really excited after the 2010 survey. We were a little less excited after this most recent survey. I show this for a couple of reasons. One is not all graphs go up, and that's okay. We can learn a lot when we look at the graphs that don't go up. And that's a nice thing about the culture of where I work, and I hope you have the same culture where you are, that you want to look at everything. It's also important to talk about context. Look at all the external factors. Not everything is in our control. 3 years ago, we went through a major merger, as well as an industry meltdown. I don't think that's shocking anybody saying that. This year, we had some other influencers. We were finishing up that merger, so all up and down the East Coast, we had probably about 80,000 of our team members were going through a branding conversion right in the middle of our campaign. That was a little distracting. Somewhere around the middle of our campaign, Occupy Wall Street began. That was a lot of fun. Disasters throughout the year, whether they happen during the campaign or not, can affect the numbers that we generate. And we also had a major benefits restructure that I love our HR communications team. They help us with everything I do. But they decided the best way to communicate this would be to tell people all throughout the campaign, benefits changes are coming. But they wouldn't tell us what they were. So it created a lot of uncertainty around, is this going to cost me money? Can I donate them? So these things are all influencers in the numbers we generate, which is one of the reasons we look so closely at our surveys to tell, are we really providing the kind of program that our team members want and that's good for the company? How we promote the survey is we send out a link in emails, all of the emails we send about the campaign. If you donate or pledge, you get a confirmation email. We put that link in there, and we have it on our website both before and after the pledge process. We really try to get a strong mix of pledgers and non-pledgers, because mostly we want to know why people are not participating if they're not.
You said that you had an open campaign.
Any 501c3, yeah.
Anyone, and you acknowledged the United Way contribution. So how much was like the overall contribution, or do you just term it as a United Way campaign, or?
That's as measured by United Way. They look at certain things and they exclude certain other things. So when I say we raised $44 million, that's all employee funds. That's all during the campaign. Doesn't include any match or anything like that. And it is to all 501c3 church and school. About 20 to 25% of our employee dollars go to United Way. And United Way is a big partner for us, but we're very strong proponents of open campaign or strategic trust campaign.
You know, the dollars that were raised outside of the campaign, you all facilitate that? Is that payroll deduction, or what does that look like?
So the amount raised outside the campaign, we don't count that as money we raised. It's there because we have a lot of executives in particular who sit on boards, and they go to the gala in March, and our campaign's in September, and they write a big check, $20,000, $30,000 or whatever it is, hand it to the executive director, and then the campaign comes and they say, well, I just gave away all my money, I don't have any more to give. So, but I don't want to be counted as not being philanthropic. Give me a way to get recognized as a leadership donor, even though I'm not giving through payroll deduction. So it's...
Are they through two United Way organizations?
No, it could be to anybody.
Yeah, I understand that sounds, sounds.
We can talk later
Yeah,
in detail, and I'm happy to talk to
we
anybody
have the
about
same
that.
type of campaign, we call it open, but that, you're counting it, you're talking about it in the context of the campaign when it's a charitable donation, right?
Yeah.
You wouldn't just call it a charitable I mean, you get credit either way, but you're talking about it in context of the United Way campaign, or giving campaign, which I guess I don't see the correlation to that.
We report two different numbers. When we talk about it publicly, we talk about two different numbers. When we talk about the campaign numbers, it's smaller than two.
Okay.
So we do distinguish between what we raise and what our employees give. So I hope that
How long does your campaign run?
1 month, month of September. We have some spillover in terms of leaving the online to a local position. Yes,
Did you say it includes churches as well?
church and schools.
I'm sorry, most companies won't. That's not my ass. That's pretty risky.
So one of the things I learned during our merger with Wachovia, both companies, very, very strong employee involvement in the community and corporate donation history. Very strong community involvement. So I figured merging our campaigns would be a piece of cake, right? It would work out really well. Halfway through September, our numbers in Charlotte, which is where Wachovia was headquartered, were really low. And I thought, okay, our community affairs person isn't really getting it. So I gave him a call and said, what are you doing? He proceeded to give me a master's thesis course on running an employee giving campaign. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. Why are the numbers not going up? And there were two things that hit me. One is Wachovia had a very top-down, management communicates to the employees and makes an ask kind of culture. Wells Fargo did not. Very grassroots, very event-based. I mentioned the thousands of volunteers that go out and actually make the ask. So we looked at that and said, okay, we need some managers to send some emails in the Charlotte market, and boom, that had a big effect. The other thing was, Wells Fargo's culture is really, in the campaign, is really about the company supporting our team members' philanthropy. Wachovia's was much more the old United Way model, the company asking the employees to support the company's philanthropy. It's a very subtle distinction, but it's also a very important distinction. When we realized that, we changed some of our communication tactics, and we were able to present the Wells Fargo culture a little more into the Wachovia markets. That's why we included churches and schools and all 501c3s, is because we are supporting the employees' philanthropy. And there are a lot of churches that have really great social programs. And for the most part, that's the stuff that our employees are giving. We don't match that. We only match the schools. So, am I way over time, by the way?
Getting there.
Didn't I? Do I need to stop?
No, another 5 minutes.
Okay.
You should have said 3.
What?
You should have said 3.
Thanks a lot. 3.
Okay, so, so more about what our team members have told us. So this goes into a specific part of the survey that I do want to talk about, feeling uncomfortably pressured to donate. It's something we do not want. As I mentioned, we want to support employees' philanthropy. It's a choice. We've all heard multiple stories from people who are very philanthropic, very involved, but for one reason or another choose not to or can't get through a company campaign, and that's not for me to judge. So we had, in 2009 survey, we had an uptick by 1%. It went from 16 to 17% of people saying they felt unduly pressured to give. And we said that's the wrong trend. So we looked at that really in depth and said, okay, we need to put out a privacy policy. We need to put out publish some reporting guidelines, what we will and won't report on, because we take privacy seriously and our team members just don't understand how we do that. And we did that, we published those things and we talked about it with our campaign leaders. And in 2010, again, very happy to see these numbers drop. That was the trend we wanted to see. We made the impact on the campaign we wanted to. Then in 2011, we focused on some other things with the campaign, and we didn't really talk so much about privacy. And we saw this go up again. So guess what we're going to be focusing on in 2012? That's not the way we want to see it go. And I put this up here again because not all graphs go the right direction, but also just to show you how we drive what we do year over year in our planning. We don't just look at, okay, what events can we run this year? How can we say the same thing again? But what are we really presenting to our employees, and does it match what they want? And then finally, we have some data. We presented this again to HR to help them understand how they can communicate with our leaders why pressure is a bad thing. It's easy to make somebody give once, but that's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to get them to be lifelong involved in the community. And what we found was, of course, people who feel pressure to give usually feel dissatisfied with the campaign. People who don't feel pressure to give, they have high satisfaction ratings of 75%. 3 out of 4 say I'm very satisfied with the campaign, whereas only 1 out of 3 say that if they're feeling pressure to give. And since we know people who feel pressure to give don't give as much on average, it's a bad long-term strategy. And that is where I will end it. Just want to make sure I'm looking at my notes, make sure I covered everything I want to cover. Yeah.
Thanks, Peter. Andrea.
Good morning. How's everybody feeling this morning? That's great. I'm going to try and go through these fairly quickly. Which document? This one. This one. This one. Okay.
There we go.
Even I can do that. So my name is Andrea Taylor. I'm the Director of Community Affairs in North America for Microsoft. What that means is that we manage basically 3 programs. I was based in Redmond, where our headquarters are. I recently relocated to be based in New York, which is my hometown, and I spend a lot of time on airplanes going back and forth. I just came back from Redmond on Sunday night. But I want to give you a little context very quickly about what we do overall so that this presentation might make more sense. I work with the team, like Peter, we don't have lots and lots of people. We have a small group based in Redmond of about 12 people who are working on community affairs. That includes the global work. So I have a counterpart in every region across the world who does similar work in their own cultural and country context. And on the team for North America, we have basically 4 people. And we manage programs that include a grant program. We've been focused recently on workforce development and skills training for out-of-school youth and for underserved adults, helping those populations to get the skills that they need in order to be employable, given that we know that about 60 to 70% of the jobs today require technology skills. So that's one component, and we make grants recently on an RFP basis to organizations that can build models that will scale to develop the training and the skills building that these populations need. And one of our most popular programs has been something called Elevate America's Veterans, where we're working with veteran populations, particularly post 9/11 veterans, who are coming back in increasingly large numbers, and increasingly, unfortunately, they are not skilled to enter and make an easy transition into the workplace. And so we're targeting that population as well as their spouses, who are very young. Average age of a veteran is about 22 years old. And they have often, high school diploma and not much more, and they need a lot of help. So that's just an example of the kind of grant programming that we're doing. So that's one aspect of our work. Second aspect of our work are product donations and our software donations. So we make about $300 million plus dollars worth of software donations to nonprofits globally. About 85 to 100 million of that is in the U.S. And any 501c3 organization can go to our website, TechSoup.org, where it's a very large donation, come to our team, and we will make software available to help them be more productive and more efficient, both in their operations and also in terms of helping clients who they're training to get the latest technology so that they're being trained and they will be competitive in the workplace. And then the third component of our work is the employee engagement piece, which runs the gamut of activities, which is what I will focus on here today. But I'll just tell you that I don't think anyone needs to know that Microsoft has, philanthropy in our DNA. Bill Gates and the Gates Foundation has become a global symbol of philanthropy. Before and since his departure from the company, and focused full-time on the Gates Foundation. So our employees really have bought into that notion, and we have a system of employee giving that really fosters and encourages every single employee in the U.S. I'm talking now about the U.S. We have 55,000 employees in this country and 90,000 plus overall. But this program is for the 55,000 U.S.-based employees. And every employee in the company has a $12,000 annual match available to them. So if they write a check to any combination of nonprofit organizations up to $12,000, Microsoft will match that donation dollar for dollar. And we have about a 63%, 64% participation rate. And we haven't done the kind of in-depth survey that you were talking about, Peter, but we do have an overall employee survey that gives us indicators about how they feel about a number of things, including the direction of the company and where we are, how we're performing, the leadership of the company, et cetera. And we know consistently from those annual surveys that the employee giving and employee engagement programs are extremely important to our employees. It's an important recruitment tool. We ask about it, we talk about it when we're recruiting employees. Many of our employees are young employees, and they're the millennials, and they're the generation that want to move back. They're very active, and they want to know how the company and their employer is going to help them and facilitate and empower them. And I think if we didn't have these programs to talk about, we would have a problem. that people would say, well, you know, I'm going to look at these other companies X, Y, and Z. It's not why we do it, but we know from feedback that this is really critical, and it's true for all employees, but particularly for the younger employees that we are recruiting. So I would then like to transition. That just gives you kind of an overview of where we are. I will say that the lead in the story of our employee giving is that we were very pleased that this year, FY12, we passed the $100 million mark with our employee giving campaign. So that's 55,000 employees who gave they gave half of the $100 million, and we matched the other half. So we were really very excited that we reached that milestone.
And what was it the year before?
The year before we were at 90, and we were at 94.5 or 95. So it went up, and we've been intrigued to see that, you know, during the economic downturn starting in 2009, we were very concerned about how that would impact the trend line. And actually it continued to go up. And you'll hear some of why I think that happened, but the employees felt very much that we got from feedback that they were so fortunate that they still had their jobs and that they were in a position to be helpful, that they took on without any real pressure, because we were very sensitive about these issues of pressuring employees. That's a slippery slope that you don't want to go down. And so we were very gratified to see that we did not lose any momentum in the campaign. So with that, it does take a village, an internal village, to really get to a 100 million campaign. And we do all this work again with about 5 people on the North America team. And so I want to start by talking a little bit about the structure of our campaign and how we get involved. And so this is a pyramid that shows so the employees are at the top of the inverted pyramid, 55,000 of them, and then we create a structure around which we can reach out to these employees and try to touch each and every employee at least once directly during the campaign. We conduct our campaign in October, but we have tools available for year-round giving. So anybody can go into the tool at any time in the year and make their contributions and get the match. And then it all accrues up to a year-end number that results in 100,000. In the month of October, we have a very visible and active campaign to bring it to people's attention, to get them to donate, and to encourage them. And it's the only period in the year when you can actually go in and make a donation and use the payroll deduction. So the employees are at the top of the pyramid. The next rung on the ladder are VPALs. These are vice presidential appointed leads, who are employees that help us with the campaign in their business groups. So there are about 300 of those people, and they're chosen by their managers, and either through volunteering or they're asked to serve, so that they would be responsible within their business group for the campaign. And they give, as you see here, about 10 hours a week for 10 weeks. Then the next group are the lone executives, and these are 5 or 6 people who compete. They submit an application, and they are competing to be pulled out of their full-time role and work full-time on the campaign from August to November. And they will then take on an aspect of the campaign. So we have an auction, so somebody will organize the auction. We have direct outreach, somebody will organize that. So each of the aspects of the campaign are managed by these lone executives, and those 5 people are actually really critical. We could not do the campaign without them. And usually they're people who've been very involved in the community. They want to give back more. And it's a great way for them to have really a broader view and engagement with the company overall. And they join in with the one full-time person on my team who manages the campaign to become the campaign brain trust.
Are those long executives, are those manager above, director above? What is the level of
They're usually manager and below, because when they come into this role, they have to be Jack and Jill of all trades. They have to do everything from A to Z. And frankly, we found that sometimes higher level people who are used to delegating want to delegate, but in this role, there's nobody behind you. You're in, and if you can't make that adjustment and quickly from day one, it really isn't helpful. So we've learned about profile. Yes?
Do you also look at skill set then, like if they're already doing like a project management type of role, when you look to?
We do, we think about, we go through an interview process with all the applicants, we narrow it, and then we're trying to build what will be a team that has to come together again from day one, work very quickly, very intensively. It's almost like a 24/7 kind of experience. And so we're looking for a range of skills that will fill the needs for the campaign. And then we've got, as I said, one full-time equivalent and a vendor, or two vendors who are helping us. And so this campaign structure, as I said, we try to touch all the 55,000 employees. We do conduct surveys and sort of post-campaign discussions on trends. And we get really a fresh group of LEs every year. They can only do that for 1 year. We don't have any repeat LEs. So they bring in a new energy and a new perspective every year. The VPALs, on the other hand, we try to maintain some continuity there. So anywhere from 50 to 75% of those people will be return folks, and they give us institutional memory, and they kind of know how to get the ground running. And then we use social media and other tools very extensively to communicate with our employees. So what you see here is our Give site. On the left is the Give site that we used to have, and then we spent some of our hard-earned dollars, if you will, and invested in redesigning the website. And what you see on the right is we move from sort of just giving people a lot of text-based, dense information that we know people really don't read and they're not attracted to. And we have on the right the more inspirational website, which is all very interactive. So each of these areas that you see here, it says, you know, payroll deduction, auction match. Now you click on those, you can go in and immediately get the information that you need. We are able to track how many click-throughs are in each area, so we know what people are looking at, what they're concerned about, or interested in. We also added here, this is a video wall. This has been really sort of terrific. It's kind of a Facebook for our Give campaign, so people can go in voluntarily and they can post their photo and tell the story about the organization that they're volunteering for or that they're giving money to and why they feel so strongly about this and why they think that it's important. And so that's also been very, very useful to have this interactivity, and people are inspired by other people's stories. We get literally hundreds, if not thousands, of people posting on the video wall and telling us, telling really all the entire community within the company what they're doing and how they're going about their volunteer activity. The other piece that is part of our campaign is that the employees can match dollars for hours that they donate. So every employee can't write a check for $12,000, but if they volunteer their time, after the first 10 hours, we will make available a payment after the first 10 hours of $17 an hour to the organization. So now the organization is not only getting employees' time, but they're getting money. And it's really interesting in Puget Sound, where we have about 40,000 of these 50,000 employees, the organizations there know that this is available as a benefit, so they really come after Microsoft volunteers because they know they're going to get a 2-for-1, people and money. And many of them actually send out sort of dunning notices toward the end of the year, and they'll remind their volunteers who are Microsoft employees that, you remember you went to all these meetings, you did all these things. And they do. And they say, we calculated that you've donated 100 hours. Please send us a check for $1,700.
One is, what's your relationship with United Way? I've seen this present global reports, and you didn't mention them. And then the other one is, can you do, it sounds like dollars for doers and the matching gifts?
Yes, you can mix it up. You can mix it up in any way. That
is the max 12,000, depending, or are they two different programs? Or am I not tracking?
No, they're the same program, so you can do both. So in other words, if I volunteer for 100 hours for the United Way and they're due $1,700 check, then that's $1,700 that the United Way would get as a result of the time I've given is deducted from the $12,000.
Okay.
So you can mix it up in whatever way is appropriate. We do have a couple of employees, and there are only a handful, who sort of border on, we're wondering if they're working for Microsoft or they're working for the charity, but most people know what the boundaries are and operate, within that. Yes, question back here.
Does Microsoft also offer paid release time to volunteer?
I'm sorry?
Do you offer paid release time to volunteer?
No, we don't, because we feel that what we're offering is pretty generous, and people, and if they want to do volunteer time, they have to do that after work and on the weekends. What we do for our overseas employees, and I noticed you said as well, you don't really have the overseas program. It's harder because it's harder to know who's a 501c3 and who qualifies as a nonprofit, and it gets to be much more complicated. But overseas, we allow our employees, I think, to get up to 5 days of release time, paid time that they can go and volunteer because they've not participated in these programs that we have domestically. Yes?
So the $12,000 is for matching gifts, matching campaign, and volunteerism for all three?
Yes, yes. So $12,000 is the one-time amount for everybody. You start with that on January 1st, and then you deduct from that, and it can also include product donations. I failed to mention that. So if you want to give an organization some number of software packages or whatever, you can deduct that as well. You can, and then they can get them go out and buy the software.
So do you find that the matching gifts sort of cannibalizes the campaign? Because I'm getting the same match, so why should I, unless I want to payroll deduction, why would I want to go through that campaign when I can give directly?
We don't really, we're agnostic about that. We sort of don't care how you give it. If I understand your question correctly, they can do it through the payroll deduction, they can do it through their own efforts, they can do it by volunteering and taking down the money. We don't really, it doesn't matter to us how they participate. We just want people to participate. Does that answer your question?
Yes, but then what happens is your campaign, if you're tracking campaign specifically, right, your participation in the campaign may be down because people are going through the matching gifts as opposed to giving money through campaign.
Well, we think of our campaign as a year-round effort.
Okay.
So everything that's done every month from day 1 to day 365 is counted. And the campaign is really just to, incentivize those people who may have forgotten or who aren't focused on it. And it's a way of, putting a spotlight on it. But it's a year-round campaign, and $100 million represents what happens from January to December. The other thing that someone mentioned earlier about, you want to get people to give year after year, we've discovered that if someone makes a $25 contribution, that's probably not much of a commitment. $25 doesn't seem like that much, and people sort of give that and they don't think about it. It's not the same kind of commitment. But once we get people to make a $100 contribution, then they start to think about how is this a part of an overall plan and pattern for giving. And then we have a category of leadership giving, which we put at $1,000. Any combination of many things is $1,000, and that puts you in the leadership category. And so we target the effort to really try to encourage people to at least become leadership givers. And we have incentives for those people, so when we get free tickets to the ballet or the museum or the orchestra, we send out opportunities for leadership givers to get these free tickets and to do special things that really sort of recognizes the additional commitment that they have made. Other questions about that? If not, I just wanted to show you again, this is a slide taken from a screenshot from the website where someone has posted, and she's being Mary Poppins. And, she's gone to great elaborate trouble to pose this picture and to talk about why she gives to a particular organization that works on supporting cure for breast cancer. So again, it's fun. People like to participate in it. This tool is also great. We had an auction during our October giving period, an online auction, get lots of items. We probably generate about $600,000 or $700,000 in the auction, and all of those proceeds go to United Way. Someone asked a question about United Way. United Way is mixed up within the campaign. We have certain number of programs that we give United Way sort of a preferential treatment, so they get all the proceeds from the United Way, gets all the proceeds from the auction.
Also
people
events.
For events, special events. because the United Way is an interesting challenge. We have a strong history with the United Way in King County, which I think is one of the largest in the system, and it consistently raises $115, $120 million for one county. On the other hand, we have a workforce that is very diverse, and probably half of the people who are in the 40,000 in Puget Sound are originally from somewhere else. They don't necessarily have the tradition of the United Way, they don't understand it. We try to make it an option, but we can't force it. Again, we're very sensitive about inspiring employees and not insisting that they participate. And the more you do that, the more likely you are to get participation. And the other thing that we did during the period of the recession, previously we had set specific dollar targets for our goal. We'd say we were trying to raise 85 million or 90 million, whatever the number was, and we did it based on what happened the previous year, what we thought the conditions were. When the recession occurred, I think it was 2009, the first year, that we decided not to set a specific goal, but we set a range. So we said we were trying to raise between, 85 and 90 million. So we gave ourselves a little cover. We wanted to have a success no matter how much we raised or didn't raise, and that turned out to be a good strategy. It took a lot of the pressure off, and yet people continued to perform. So it was an interesting learning for us. This is a tool that I just want to mention quickly. It's called Volunteer Manager. It's a tool that we created internally to give us another way of getting feedback and creating a tool that would make it easy for our employees to participate. So we worked with, we call it a sort of a match.com for volunteers. We worked with Taproot and some other organizations you may be familiar with to create a set of standards for volunteering. And we now use this with our employees. That this is sort of a screenshot from a mobile phone, a Windows mobile phone. Should I say that again? Anyway, from a Windows mobile phone, we put together this tool that allows you to go into the tool and determine where you might want to volunteer, what skills you have, what time available you have, what you'd like to do, and geographically where you would like to volunteer. So if you live in a particular neighborhood.
Where are you getting the feed on the volunteer opportunities? Is that coming through?
We have to encourage organizations to come in and enter their data and their information.
So it's a proprietary Microsoft?
Yes, at the moment, yes.
So the nonprofits have to know to go to Microsoft and enter everything.
Right. But we do a lot of outreach, particularly in Puget Sound, again, where the bulk of the employees are, and we invite them to the campus, we invite them to fairs, we invite them to interact with us so that our employees will know. And also the employees themselves can go in. If they're volunteering in an organization, they can go in and introduce it. And then we have a database of matching from the Matching Gift Program. So our $100 million campaign, I think, supports about 18 to 20,000 nonprofits. So we have that database as well that we can integrate. And then this is, again, a screenshot of the tool, the Windows phone. You can go in and, it uses the GPS technology to locate you and then to locate where the opportunities are for volunteering and to locate where you could go for training. And then there's another screen that allows you to keep track of all this, because all of this activity requires that the volunteer and the employee goes into the tool and proactively enters the data, the time that they volunteered, how many hours, where. They have to go in and request the match. It requires a fairly proactive employee, and so we want to make this as easy and as portable and as simple as possible.
Is the data, does it have to be verified, or do you take the employee's word?
Pretty much we take the employee's word. On the other hand, if I write a check for my alma mater and send it off, we do all of our processing through JK. I don't know if many of you use JK, and they will then double check with the recipient to say, did you actually receive the check for X dollars? So again, I'm going to wrap up so we have some time for questions. I just want to focus for a minute on what we do with social media, and we do have an active social media effort. It's an important tool for our engagement. we use it as a way to push information out and to also get information back from our employees. We have conversations going on. We incorporate employee feedback. And during our annual giving campaign, like many of you, we use our internal news tool, which is called MSW, and we have an internal microblog. We have Office Talk, which is the intranet, so that employees can talk back and forth to one another. We also do, as I said, we have a very robust auction site and do sneak previews of auction items and engage in sort of a friendly kind of competition with other groups. I was always, when I was in Redmond, I was always involved in an auction because I wanted to get a choice parking space. And we would auction off the parking spaces that were closest to the elevator door, so when you came in, you didn't have to run around. And you can, it's a very robust thing every day. Somebody would outbid me, and every day I'd go back and put in the next rung up. I always managed to prevail. Not interested in spending my time as a New Yorker without a car, looking for parking in the Microsoft parking lot. But what we found with all of this social media activity, that listening and having a two-way communication mechanism is absolutely critical. And if your employees are anything like Microsoft employees here, they feel very empowered, almost entitled, they're not shy, and they give us a lot of feedback. So we know at any given moment, what's on their minds. And we've now included in our internal web communication, they have the opportunity to share through Facebook and Twitter things that are appropriate, so they can just go in and click and share this, and we do a lot of that. So when we announced that we had reached the 100 million mark with our campaign, about, I guess it was a couple months ago now, the employees were so excited and so engaged, they picked up on that immediately. They started tweeting, they Facebook, they did everything and that day we hit the record in as trending as the #1 topic in Seattle, because they were just sharing that news all over the place. So it was really very exciting. So we recognize that these tools are important for our employees, and it does incentivize them to get involved. And we try to make it visual, fun, interactive, and I think I will stop there. But there's my email address if anybody would like more information, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. We have about 10 more minutes for questions, so if anybody has more questions for any of the panelists. Yeah.
Andrea, question about, you mentioned that you have a $12,000 limit per employee, and it varies. They can use it for software donations, the cash contributions, so forth. Do you have a way to deduct and select whether it's software in the system, whether that 12,000 is the software, what is the cash, so forth and so on?
Yes, you have absolute control over that. And again, unfortunately, I can't really show it to you without showing you my personal profile. We need a dummy kind of system, but you can control all of that. And what we also, so that you can choose who's going to get which match, or you can decide. This year, for example, I'm making a major gift to my alma mater. So everybody else on my gift list, they'll get my donation, but they're not going to get the match because I'm sending it all to this one particular program. So I can go in and I can control how that works. And you can control all of those activities. And you can also, we encourage, I think as I heard you say, Peter, we encourage our employees to even put in donations that exceed the $12,000. So our executives are giving, $1 million. They're giving a lot of money to various things. They can go in and they can note that. They just can't access it for the match. So we're encouraging our employees to aggregate all of their contributions, and then it's up to them to decide how they want to match. The other interesting thing is we do have a small cadre of people, even though we have only I think 63% participation is very good. We do have a cadre of people who wanted to be even more, who are maxing out on their match every year, and who would like us to increase it to 15, and it's a perennial conversation. We respond, as you might expect, by saying, the minute we reach 100%, then we'll look at that. 100%, you know. It was like my children with a car. When I lived in New York, they kept asking me, my children, could you buy me a car? And I didn't have a car. And I said, as soon as I buy a car for myself, you're next to me.
Let me go over to Annie.
Yes, question for Andrea. For your fundraising auction where the monies go to United Way, where do you get the auction items?
Employees. So employees donate things, you know, vacation homes, you know, they'll come and clean your house, they'll cook you a meal, they'll give you a ride on their boat, all kinds of things, you know, of that sort. And we had, about 2 years ago, we had one of the auction items was withdrawn. Bill Gates had annually given a tour and dinner at his home, and I think the price was something like $42,000, and it was a really hot item. He finally sunsetted that item, but employee groups would pool their resources to get the money and bid on that, and they usually get a fairly healthy. It was usually the largest single item, and you know, because people pooled it. So people are very creative with the you know, with the auction tool.
That's a great engagement exercise right there.
And people get involved. The other thing that we do, we have now for the last, I guess, 3 or 4 years, had a fun run. So we have a 5K run. Microsoft campus is pretty large. If any of you have ever seen it, it's spread out. We have enough room to accommodate a run with about 3,000 to 4,000 people. And so the 5K run now that we do every year in October to quit the campaign is the largest single 5K in King County. I mean, these things just sort of grow. And the idea is we've learned that if you make this fun and you give people lots of different avenues with which they can engage, then they, you know, something will appeal to them. Not everything will appeal to everybody, but something will appeal, and people come in, and once they are drawn in, and it's done in a fun way, no pressure. We really try we hear about that, we try to cut that off immediately. And they're engaged because they're having a good time.
Yes?
You mentioned that you give grants through RFP. Is that a separate budget or is that part of the underground?
Yes, that's a separate budget. That's the budget that we have that's sort of funds acting like a foundation. So we have a budget worldwide that we can actually invest in community programming. And that's completely separate and apart. We try, but mixed results to try to get people to volunteer and donate to the programs that we fund as a program, but we really, that has not been, it hasn't been a priority really, and it's hard to do, so we kind of, the two don't necessarily overlap, except in one instance. We have a long-standing partnership with the Boys and Girls Club, and so we give, you know, we've been giving money annually to the Boys and Girls Club for a number of years. We, in our conversations with them, we realized that we had never included the matching dollars, so we just out of curiosity, a couple of years ago, we went back to see how many employee dollars were going through the match to the Boys and Girls Club. Turned out to be about $600,000 that they're getting just for employee engagement. You know, we didn't know anything about it. We weren't doing anything proactively to encourage it, but they were picking up another, you know, $500,000 plus.
So last question over here.
This one is actually for Peter. You had talked about how low engagement often is in correlation with low volunteerism and giving. Do you guys have a strategy to try to reach that group, that 5 to 10%, or you just want to focus more on the people that actually are like, you know, you want to keep and are engaged?
Okay. Well, I think there are two different ways to approach that question. One is the company and HR have strategies to improve engagement. Now, of course, the outcome is we want to improve engagement scores. The way you do that is you improve the environment in which people work so that they actually feel engaged in their jobs. The other part of your question is me and my programs, the part that I can control. Am I more interested in trying to get those people to volunteer and donate, or am I more interested in building on strength? Is that sort of what you're looking
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we have so many different departments, and I'm trying to build a program that doesn't exclude anyone, but maybe the lesson learned by people that have already done it before is that if we focus on the 60% that want to do it, then you'll just get a much better use out of your time than just really trying to get the 10% that's never going to come.
I think you have to do both. It's sort of the long-term, short-term strategy. We all have heard the analogy of low-hanging fruit. Let's go after the easy stuff, but that's doing short-term at the expense of long-term. You want to do both. We do look long-term at how we structure our program, and we communicate to everybody, like Andrew was saying, provide a broad range of options for people to plug into, and they will find the thing that connects with them. If we focus in too much, for example, over the last several years, we've seen a trend where the number of donors we've had has stayed pretty flat, but the average gift has started to go way up. And we can see in our numbers that, fortunately, our average gift across the board is going up. It's not just the top givers giving more. And I think that's because of our inclusive messaging. But at the same time, we're saying things like the need is greater. We're fortunate to be in the position we're in. So we're trying to finesse the messaging to get both. I think if we were just focused on the outcome, just the number, we'd probably go after those who are most engaged and most involved, the biggest donors, and ask them to give more. But I think that's a short-term strategy that could undermine the long-term.
Great.
So let's give a hand to the panel.